Mr. Gautam Adani is currently in the news because he has left Warren Buffett behind and has become the fifth richest person in the world. Last year, he added $49 billion to his net worth and created a total net worth of $123 billion, which are Rs 945,000 crores in Indian rupees. Gautam Adani has been the only person in the world whose net worth has grown so much in the last year. Has his business performed so well, or only the valuation has increased? Or has he got the help from some of his connections? Mr. Gautam Adani's first business was of exports. And how did he enter this trade? It is an interesting story. In 1981, Gautam Adani's elder brother, Mansukh Bhai Adani, called him from Mumbai to Gujarat to manage his plastic business. And there was an important component in his business, which was PVC, which they had to purchase from other companies. Gautam Adani spoke to many PVC companies in India, but no one was ready to give them 20-ton PVC on a monthly basis, so they needed to import the PVC from somewhere else. So therefore, he started exploring the international market. And hereby, he also started acquiring the expertise for the international market. He then started importing PVC from abroad. Not just that. Later on, he also started importing other things, like petroleum products, chemicals, etc. And very soon, he created a business with it called Adani Exports. Mr. Adani was always a very opportunistic businessman. Wherever he gets the opportunity, he jumps in that area and capitalizes on that opportunity. In the beginning, he used to export agricultural products. Slowly, he understood that metal and textiles are also in huge demand in the foreign countries, where we can export the Indian goods. He started importing those too, and along with this, he also started having some political connections. Gautam Adani saw a big opportunity in Gujarat's Mundra port. That time, the government decided to privatize the Mundra port for its development and executing its day-to-day operations. And this contract went to the Adani Group. But the problem at that time was, apart from this port, in Gujarat, there were 12 ports under government control, and they were connected with the railway line. And the Mundra port was not connected to the railway line. And Mr. Adani knew very well that whether it is a war or business, anyone who is controlling the logistics will always be one step ahead. Therefore, he focused on setting other group businesses around that port so that they can reduce the cost of logistics, and the businesses can take the advantage of that. Whether it was the power business, edible oil refining, or mining, he started them close to that port. And very soon after investing Rs 12,000 crores, he connected that port to the railways also to solve the logistics problem. Today, the annual handling capacity of the Mundra port is 180 million tons, and it is one of the biggest privately owned port. To fully utilize it, he created an ecosystem. Today, the Adani Group, apart from the Mundra port, owns the Krishnapatnam port, Hazira port, and 13 more ports and terminals. And Adani Port has created an ecosystem around each of them. Adani Group started trading coal from here itself and extended it further into thermal power generation. Adani mainly operates in 3 sectors: energy and utilities, transportation and logistics, incubation, wherein airport, railway, and water are included. So it can be understood that whichever sector Adani Group enters into, it all combines together to form a loose ecosystem. And recently, they have also diversified into different sectors also, like the real estate, edible oil, financial services, etc. Speaking of the net worth of Mr. Gautam Adani, his net worth is a combined figure from all these companies, like Adani Transmission, Adani Enterprises, Adani Port, Adani Greens, etc. If you look at all these businesses, they are either infrastructure related or are something which need local government permissions to be run in India or abroad, or you need the local government contracts for the businesses. And here, we will talk about the political connections of Mr. Gautam Adani, for which he has been criticized many a times. To understand this, we need to take a glance at the government contracts of the Adani Group. In 1993, when it was the matter of buying land at Mundra Port, the then Chief Minister of Gujarat, Mr. Chiman Bhai Patel, who was a part of the Congress government, he was accused of giving away the land at Rs 0.10 per meter square to the Adani Group. In 1995, Keshubhai Patel, who was a BJP CM, he was accused of giving the land to Adani at Rs 1/meter square. Then from 1996 to 2007, Mr. Shekhar Singh Vaghela, who was from the Rashtriya Janata Party, disposed off the land at the rate of Rs 1.5/square meter. Later, the Modi government at the rate of Rs 15/square meter sold 5,000 acres of land to Adanis. To this, the Adani Group has clarified that it was not an agricultural land. It was a non-usable land, so we got it at a cheaper rate. The story does not end here. When in 2018, when many airports were being privatized, one particular change was brought about in the rules. The change in the rule was that the bidder company is not mandatory required to have a prior experience in this field. And to be benefited most by this decision was the Adani Group, who at that time won the bid for 6 ports. We are seeing that the Adani Group is now entering the FMCG sector, and they are taking credit for this purpose. In the campaigning of the 2014 elections, many a times the BJP ministers were found to be using Gautam Adani's private jets. He had to face a lot of criticism for this, and some people also consider it an open display of his friendship. In the year 2003, Mr. Adani extended his support to Mr. Modi at the time of his need. It happened when Mr. Modi was the CM of Gujarat, and he had to face a lot of criticism for some violent riots that happened. And that's why the Confederation of Indian Industry, or CII, hosted an event where the country's powerful business tycoons condemned Mr. Modi on stage. But Mr. Gautam Adani left his old business allies and supported Modi. And it was a huge risk by Mr. Gautam Adani. Adani also helped set up a summit called Vibrant Gujarat, due to which Mr. Modi was later considered a pro-business leader on the world stage. Upon this, an investment panelist from Mumbai assumes that if the BJP government loses the 2024 elections, the Adani stocks will go through a lot of correction, because their connections with the current government can prove to be a liability for them later on. But an energy analyst from Austria, Tim Buckley, feels that Adani is too big to fail. If you see the Adani Group contracts from 1993 till now, you will understand one thing very clearly, that the Adani Group does not depend on one particular political party. And you will understand this very clearly when you understand this case from Australia. In 2010, for the coal access in the Galilee Basin of Australia, the Adani Group was making attempts. This mine is the biggest coal mine of Australia, where there are 9 coal mine deposits. But the biggest problem here was of transport. That's why no company was coming forward, because the coal needed to be mined first and then transported. And there were no means of transport available here. But the Adani Group understood logistics from a long time. So he thought of making a railway line there, the proposed cost of which was kept at $2.2 billion. That is around Rs 17,000 crores in Indian rupees. With the help of that, they will mine the coal and transport it, and export it to other countries like India. But now, the cost of this coal mine and rail line combined together, total project cost was $14 billion. But the Adani Group was having problems in financing it. No bank was getting ready to finance this project. And some of the banks that agreed earlier were now slowly backing out. Not because the project was not viable, but because the protests were increasing against this project. Actually, this railway line was supposed to be built along the Great Barrier Reef. It was an area very rich in biodiversity. And due to this, a movement in Australia called #StopAdani had started. Because of this, Adani Group faced difficulties in raising money for the coal mine and railway project. You must have seen in many cricket matches where people have been requesting the State Bank of India to not extend the loan to the Adani Group for this project. After this, the investors like the BlackRock, SBI, and the JP Morgan stopped their funding for the coal. But in spite of so many problems, in December 2021, a news breaks that Adani Group's Carmichael Mines, assembling high-quality coal at the Abbott port, and its first shipment will be transported within 1 week. So, where there were protests at one time and even the banks backed out, how did the Adani Group manage to do it? The Adani Group did not have the $14 billion for the project. So what did they do? They started this coal mine project on a small scale and made a small $2 billion investment on their own. We can understand the investment part, but how did they get the approval? So the Adani Group, just before the elections, brought their ruling government to their side. And that is how they could get the required approvals, and they also started their business at that place. If we talk about the Adani Group, the experts say that they are expert in 2 areas. First is they are very opportunistic. Like recently, as the Indian government stated that the data related to India will be kept in India itself. Upon seeing this, he started working on data storage in India. And second point is the political connections. Whether it is India or abroad, he has that quality that he takes everyone on his side. But the rise in the net worth is not only because of these 2 reasons. Valuation is also a very big factor here. You will see some figures on the screen, which will make a lot of things clear to you. If we check the current PE of the Adani Enterprises, it is 327. Although it is very high. Its 3-year average is 21 and 10-year average is just 4.3. So you can see by how many times this PE ratio has grown. P ratio has increased a lot means that price is increasing, but the earning or the profit is not increasing that much. So valuation has also risen a lot in this case, and the profits are rising but not that fast. Same thing goes for Adani Transmission, where the 3-year average PE is 40 and the current PE is 251. Adani Ports also has showed a little rise, but for Adani Power and for Adani Green, it is too high. Very high PE ratios cannot sustain for long in the markets. Therefore, we can say that it would be very difficult to consistently maintain this position. He would certainly be there in the richest person's list, but staying in the top 5 for a long term would be very difficult, because his valuations are currently overvalued. When the bear run happens, it is difficult to sustain such valuations. Historically, we have experienced it many times. So this was the complete story of Mr. Gautam Adani's high net worth. Let me also tell you, from small contracts of local municipality to bigger contracts in such businesses, connections play a very important role. How did you like the story of Adani? Please let us know by commenting below.